and welcome to my channel. This is a very special episode of Flosstube today because we are taking a look back at the last 6 months of my cross stitching. So 2020 mid-year update, here we go. If you are new to my channel, if this is your first time watching me, welcome. This is actually probably a great video to start with because you are gonna see everything that I've stitched on this year so far. And if you've been with me for a while, welcome back. Thank you for spending time with me. I think you're gonna enjoy this too. So if you have watched me before, you probably know that I am a giant nerd. And I keep data about my cross stitching. I really like doing it, and I enjoy analyzing that data and learning about myself and what I like to stitch on and how I stitch. So a couple of things about what I generally track. I'll track basic information about a project, like when I started it, when I finished it, and then I've got a spreadsheet that will track things for me, like how long has it been since I last stitched on this, that sort of thing. But I also keep track, every time I stitch on a project, I will count my stitches for that day as a stitching session, and then I will also track how much time I spent stitching that day. So I basically have every single time I stitch on a project, how much I stitched and how long I spent on it. And what that gets me is it gets me some estimations on like how long is it going to take me to finish a project, which for a project like a BAP, that's very interesting to know. It also helps me see what are my stale projects, what am I letting languish. I think some of us can intuit like what projects have I not touched in a while, but some of them kind of surprise me how long it's actually been. It's also really interesting to see for my long-running projects, like the number of times I've stitched on it. It's shocking. There are other projects where I'm like very close to a finish, and if you look, I've only stitched on it like 2 or 3 times. I could stitch on it one more time and be done. So why am I letting that project sit? I also keep track of, like, when I start a project, why did I start it? Did I start it to participate in something? Did I start it to give to somebody else? And I think that's interesting information too. So we're going to jump in and start looking at some projects in a second. But just so you guys know, if the data isn't really your thing, but you'd really like to see all the projects, don't worry. I'm going to have a really good mix of showing the data that I'm interested in and then also just showing projects. So it'll be all intermixed. Okay, so a couple of highlights about the year so far. I've been doing WhipGo, and I'm really enjoying that. That is a bingo board game run by Jessie Marie from Jessie Marie Does Stuff, and there's a Facebook group out there if you're interested. You can also head over to her Flosstube to see her videos about it. And basically that's just an incentive to make progress on your goals and to reward yourself with something that you want to reward yourself with. So my rewards for getting bingos on my card, which has not happened yet, my rewards for that is sending my projects out to a professional finisher. I've never done that before. I have had projects framed by Michaels, but other than that, I've never gone to a professional finisher, and I really don't enjoy FFOing projects. That's fully finishing projects. I don't enjoy that at all. I did get a sewing machine this year, and I would like to get better at using that so that I could potentially do some simple soft finishes for myself. But really, I would prefer the more challenging things or the things that I spent more time on in the stitching to have those sent to a professional. So that's my goal for WhipGo, and I'm getting close to some bingos, so we'll see if I can get there in the next couple of months. Another thing, I spent a good amount of time so far this year doing is organizing my stitching. And that's everything from, I mentioned in my most recent video that we've moved, and so my organization is all different in this house, and so getting that set up has been really fun. Getting all of my physical charts scanned in so that I have the digital copy ready to go when I want to start. So I store all of my digital projects in a Google Doc or in a Google Drive folders. And so getting all of those organized in a way that makes sense to me and makes it easy to find things. And I have enjoyed spending time on that, but also really enjoyed having it done. So that's one of the things that I'm realizing, that putting in the time to do that is a benefit for sure. And so I'd like to keep up on that organization as we go throughout the rest of the year. Next exciting tidbit is that I got Pattern Keeper, and that has been a total game changer. I'm sure you've heard it from every Flosstuber ever, but Pattern Keeper was a huge game changer for me for my big full coverage pieces, and I'm definitely noticing that I'm going a little bit faster through those pieces. I don't have that granular data to show you today, but I have noticed that looking at my data that I'm going a little bit faster with Pattern Keeper, which is awesome. And I also, this is just anecdotal, I feel like I'm making fewer mistakes, and I, feel more focused in that I don't have to worry about as much spending time looking at the pattern. The pattern can just sort of fall away and I can stitch. Another cool thing is I got a full set of DMC. I know I'm missing a couple still, but for all intents and purposes, I have a full set. So that was a big step for me. It was a lot of bobbinating for me, but totally worth it to be able to just know if I want to start something with DMC, I just have it. That was really great. And also really great during the pandemic, for sure. I went to my first retreat this year. I went to the Show Me retreat with Laura and Katie Landis from the Pattern Queens and the Black Needle Society. And I had an absolute blast. Next weekend, I am going to their Frogwarts retreat, which is also virtual because the pandemic. But I'm super looking forward to that. I had a blast at the first one. I know I'm going to have a blast again. And the awesome thing about going to that Show Me retreat that I went to was that I made friends that I have continued to talk to, and we do pretty much weekly stitching hangouts now, and that's just been so fun. So I'm very, very thankful for that, and I know that I will continue to prioritize retreats in my life as we go forward. I participated in Mania for the first time, and that was definitely a roller coaster of emotions. It was challenging, it was fun, it was rewarding, it was a little overwhelming. I really enjoyed it on the whole. And I will probably do it again. I don't know if it will look exactly the same, but I will probably do it again in some form or another. And then the last big thing that happened was that I got a page finish on my big Harry Potter covers collage. I will show that today as with all of my projects. But that one was a big step for me because up until this point, I had been seeing pretty slow progress on this project, and this year I have just burst forward, and so getting to see some big progress on that is very encouraging. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of high-level stats. So I worked on a total of 39 projects in the first 6 months of 2020. 28 of those were new starts. And I think you'll see as we move forward, a lot of those were small new starts because I had 18 finishes this year. A lot of those finishes were also starts this year. A couple of them were whips from last year, but most of them were starts from this year. I currently have 26 whips, which is, I believe, the most I've ever had. I have stitched for 339 and a third hours so far in 2020 and stitched 47,254 and a half stitches. And I've stitched on 131 days of the, 182 days of the first half of the year. So the majority. Okay, let's move into a little bit of a fun fact. So if you take my total number of stitches for the first 6 months of 2020 and divide that by the time that I spent stitching in the first 6 months of 2020, and you take that as like my rate of stitching, just as sort of an average number, and you look at a BAP the size of my Harry Potter covers collage, which I will show in a little bit. If I stitched exclusively on that piece, start to finish, at that rate of stitching, it would still take me over a year to finish. So because I'm not stitching on that exclusively, we all know that that piece is going to take me quite a while to complete. Okay, so hopefully I'm showing you a graph on the screen. This is what my stitching looked like month by month. And so you can see January was still over 4,000 stitches for the month. But then the pandemic happened and I had more free time. Also, a lot of freebies came out. And so my February stitching, you can see I had a little bit of like traveling in February. So I had a little bit of time then. So you can see that tick up a little bit. And then you've got March. When the pandemic hit, and I was just like, yep, this is my time. This is stitching time. So March, April are, quite high. And then you hit May, and May was whip go. And so I had some big goals to hit for that. So I stitched a ton in May. And then in June, you see a big dive because I moved. And moving takes time. So time that can't be spent stitching, unfortunately. So that's just a little bit of a fun review there. All right, now we're going to dive into whip go. So hopefully you're seeing my whip go board on the screen here. You can see that the dark colors are the goals that I completed, and the light colors are goals that have been called but have not been completed. And there are no goals that I've completed that haven't been called. And then the white ones are ones that have not been called yet. So I've got 3 outstanding goals, which is not too bad. I would definitely like to narrow that down. But and now that we're into the first week of July, I do know what things have been called for July. That's Autumn Quakers, and we've got spot number 5. And I mentioned a couple of videos ago that Christmas Carol is getting UFO'd. I'm still going to show it today because I worked on it so far in 2020. But that's getting UFO'd, and just temporarily. I will definitely get back to it, but it will not get any more work in 2020. So I'm replacing spot 5 on my board with Harry Potter covers. Okay, so let's start showing some whip go projects. But first I want to show you some interesting information about the goals that I picked. So you can see that in the first 2 months, my goals were pretty small. And that was just a product of me trying to break up the projects that I have in a way that made sense to me. So like my Emerald City Sal, that goal was to finish the city, but I didn't have as much stitching left in the city as I thought. And then you contrast that to a goal for Harry Potter covers, which was a half page. That's over 2,000 stitches. So it really wasn't totally even. Again, I had a couple of things that I ended up finishing, both Hildy's Brew and But First Tea. Those were both finishes, and I just didn't have very much left to go on them. So it was great that I got them finished, but that was kind of a gimme goal. So I think that's just interesting to see. And then I've got a couple of things that are still going, and so you're gonna keep seeing that grow. Pride and Prejudice is probably gonna end up being the most stitches for a goal, because the goal I set was the border, and then I messed up the border. So I'm doing a bunch of other stitching to make sure the border is right and meets up, and so that's frustrating. But so on average, my goals were about 1,600 stitches. But you can see I've got some that are a lot more and some that are a lot fewer. Also, my Harry Potter covers goals. So far, I have not completed one of those goals in the month in which it was called. It's always stretched into the next month. Actually, that's not true. There was a month that covers was called twice. That was May. And I finished the first goal in May, but not the second one. Okay, so let's start showing some WIPGO projects. Got a big stack here. Let's start with what's on my Q-Snap. I think we're going to kind of go backwards in time. So this is Piano by Woohoo. I got this off of Etsy. And my goal for this is to get all the way to the end of this row that I have chosen for myself. I think it's a row of 4 blocks. Yeah. And so that was my June goal, and I have not finished that yet, as you can see. I'm getting close, though. Okay. Also in June, I had butterflies, and I also had this goal for April. So in April, I finished up this butterfly, and then I backstitched this one and this one in April. And then for June, and then I stitched this one. Yeah, I finished this one, backstitched these two, and stitched this one, all for April. And then in June, I need to finish stitching this one and stitch one more butterfly for my June goal. And this piece, I forgot to mention, my piano is on an 18 count white Aida, and I'm stitching that 2 over 1. This I'm stitching 2 over 2. It is on a, I don't know. This is on a piece of color and cotton linen, 32 count. I don't remember the color of it. If I can think of it, I will put it in the box below. I had a tag that said, but the tag is misplaced somewhere. Okay. Then in May, I stitched on Harry Potter covers collage for both challenges of May. And so for this piece, all of my goals have been half-page finishes. And the first goal that I had, this was March, I had a partial half-page already done. So it was not quite as much work in March. And so I've done 3 goals on this so far, and now I've got a 4th for July coming up. This is designed by Fox and Teacup, and I'm doing this on 18 count Aida 2 over 1. And if you collect all of my WIPGO goals for this project for the year, I will finish all the way to the right side of the piece and then have one other half page on the next row. And that's because I switched my box 5 to this piece instead of Christmas Carol. So moving backward in time to April, I already showed butterflies. So now let's look at Pride and Prejudice. So this is the one that I mentioned. I messed up the border, so it's taking a little bit more time for me to finish. I'm stitching this on 32 count white Lugana, and this is designed by Sapphire Mountain Handcrafts. This is from her Stitching Book Club. So that's what I've got. You can see I'm starting to take out the border. I'm starting to take out the border over here and put it back in correctly. It should be obvious, but all of these projects were whips already at the beginning of the year. None of these were new starts. I didn't put any new starts on my WIPCO board. Okay, moving back in time to March. We've got I Forget the Rest. This is designed by Lindy Stitches, and I'm stitching this on, I believe this is the called for 32 count linen from Picture This Plus in the color Tarnish. And my goal for this year was to finish the branches and the leaves, and I did do that. Okay. Then also in March was Harry Potter covers, which I've already shown. Then February, we had Hildy's Brew, and this was a finish. This is designed by Bendy Stitchy, Michelle Garrett, and this was a really fun stitch. I enjoyed this a lot. This is on the called for fabric. I think it's Picture This Plus Echo, and it is an Ada, I want to say 16 count. Okay, actually I can tell you that for sure. $16 count, Picture This Plus Echo. Good memory, Beth. Okay. Also in February was A Christmas Carol. This is my Haid. I'm stitching this on 28 count Lugana, and that is why it's being UFO'd. Because I want to restart this on a 25 count easy count fabric. I started out gridding this with a marker, and then I tried to grid it with some like gridding floss. What do you call that? Gridding thread, and I didn't like it, either of those things, and so I'm gonna restart it. It's so beautiful, and I cannot wait to get back to it. But I also really want to see some significant progress on Harry Potter covers, so this is going to stay put away for a little while, and I will look forward to its return. My WIPCO goal for that was a half page as well. And now we are to January. And in January, I finished But First Tea. This is by Zindagi. I got this on Etsy. And it is on an 18 count white Ada. And of course, I didn't wash or iron any of these for you. Last but not least, we have a green 32 count Lugana for my Emerald City Sal, designed by Owl Forest Embroidery. And the goal that I completed was just finishing the city, which I think only had the Krynic left. And so I kind of thought because it was Krynic it was going to take me a while, but it did not. And I have this twice more on my board for this year, which will get me to a finish. Okay, so that is WhipGo in the bag. Let's move on and talk about focus pieces. So these are pieces that I stitched on for 10 hours or more in 2020. These are not pieces that like I set aside as focus pieces or that I set a goal to stitch for 10 hours or more. These are just pieces that I have spent a considerable amount of time on and want to highlight that for you. So ones that you've already seen, Butterflies, Harry Potter covers, and I Forget the Rest, and Pride and Prejudice. Those are all things that you saw for WhipGo right there that I'm not going to show again, but that got 10 hours or more of progress. All right. So this piece got 10 hours or more, and that is Old Faithful. This was a kit. It's designed by the Posey collection, and I'm doing this on 18 count Aida. This is not the kit Aida, but I'm doing it with the kit floss, which is just DMC. And I bought this at Yellowstone in September of last year. And that is on my WhipGo board to finish it this year, but it hasn't come up yet. I think the rest of these were new starts this year. So this is my Blackwork chessboard. This has definitely languished a little bit in quarter 2 of this year. I'm doing this on 32 count antique white Lugana. This is designed by Peppermint Purple, and I have not started in on any of the square fills yet. I'm just trying to get the board and the border in. I had big hopes and dreams to finish this year. This is a gift from my boyfriend. He doesn't know about it, but he's in the room next to me, so maybe he's hearing this right now. But with the pandemic, it's been nearly impossible to stitch when he's not around because we're both here at home all the time. So this has definitely languished a little bit. I should just tell him about it and then work on it, but I have not done that. Next is You Had Me at Flamingo by Hands On Design. I'm doing this on 32 count Belfast Toasted Coconut by Color and Cotton. And I started this as my Show Me Retreat small, but then the Show Me Retreat didn't happen in person. So maybe I'll just keep it, or maybe I'll save it for another smalls exchange. But that's my progress. And I was just flying through this trying to get this done in time to like FFO it for the Show Me Retreat, and then when the pandemic hit, I was like, oh, I don't need to rush on this. I really like that, and I'm looking forward to a finish on that. And this was fun because I kitted this up right before the pandemic hit, and so this was the last thing I got to go to Cardinal Needleworks for, which is my LNS. Run by Angela of Color and Cotton. Okay, and the last, I have 3 more projects, I think, that got 10 hours or more. Next up, we've got hashtag Be Well and Stitch. This is one of the quarantine freebies. This is designed by Heartstring Samplery, and I did this on a mystery color and cotton even weave. I think it's 28 count. And this is the only one of the Be Well and Stitch freebies that took me more than 10 hours to finish. Everything else was smaller. But there's quite a bit of stitching in here. Next, we have Tin Man. This is designed by Brooks Books. I did this on an 18 count vintage country mocha. And this is a gift for my dad for Father's Day, and he's seen it, but I have not FFO'd it yet. I don't really know how I'm going to FFO it. I might ask for his opinion. And last but not least, I'm going to be inserting a picture because it was a gift and it has already been given to its recipient. And this piece is of a poppy and a lily. And it was for a friend of mine going through a hard time who finds significance in those particular flowers. Okay. And that was also a start this year, if that wasn't obvious. All right, so let's move into whips over time. So this is just going to be a nice visual of what my starts and finishes have looked like. So you can see that the blue line here, hopefully you're seeing the graph on the screen. The blue line is starts, the red line is finishes. So you can see that I had a couple of starts in January and February, and then March and April I was stitching a lot of Be Well and Stitch, and then May was Mania, so I was starting a lot for that, and then June calmed down after Mania a little bit, but I've got some Black Lives Matter starts in June, and as you can see, in April, I started finishing off those small starts that I'd started in March. And then May was totally focused on starts, so of course I didn't finish anything. And June, I'm starting to finish things again. So as you can see, I have experienced quite a big spike in my whips, and I keep saying I need to focus on whipping down a little bit. And we all know that I'm not going to do that. There's always shiny new things to start. I'm going to try really hard though. So let's dig in a little bit to why am I starting things? Because this is really interesting for me to see the phases that I go through. So I'm rarely just starting things because I feel like it, because I just it just hit me and I was like, I need to start this right now. So I have a number of starts that were gifts, some that have already been given away, some that still need to be given. Be Well and Stitch really kicked my butt in terms of starts because there were just so many that were so awesome. And it was all I was thinking about at the time was the pandemic. And so being able to have those starts was really fun for me. Then of course Mania, obviously. I started one Sal this year, and then there were a few other smaller events that I've lumped into one category, but those events are the fires in Australia, Cardinal Needleworks, the LNS that I just mentioned, run by Angela of Color and Cotton, that opened, and there was a freebie associated with that. Then there was a health scare in my family. We almost lost my grandma, so I started something for that I was gonna stitch for myself to remember her, and then because she is incredible and managed to stick with us, I'm gonna finish that up and give it as a gift to her. Then I started something fun for my birthday, and then we have some Black Lives Matter starts. So I'm gonna walk you through all of those here today. Let's first start with my Sal start. I started Peppermint Purple's Blackwork Sal, and I'm stitching this on 32 count dark cobblestone Lugana, and I'm stitching this all in DMC 3866. And I am real behind on this, guys. Real behind. I haven't stitched on this since like February. This actually looks better from kind of further away. And this is called for in like a beautiful rainbow, but I wanted to do something different. Okay, next category we've got, let's do Mania next. So for Mania, I started enough projects to stitch on everything for 3 days. So I started Ruth Bader Ginsburg from Cloud's Factory. This got quite a bit of progress. I'm stitching this on 32 count Lavender Lugana. Next we have Carrot Forest by Owl Forest Embroidery, and I'm stitching this on the kit fabric with the kit floss. That's what that looks like. Then I started the Woodland Sal, and I didn't count this as a Sal because I didn't start it when the Sal started. I didn't like hop on the bandwagon, but I did purchase it a few months after it had started, and now it is over. And that's by Doreen Jones through Lakeside Needlecraft. And I'm pretty close to finishing the first part of it. And I'm doing this on the called for Lugana. This is an exclusive for this pattern called Woodland. It's 32 count Lugana. Or it could be Joblin. I don't know. It says even weave. I really like this fabric. Okay, next I started a Mill Hill kit of a sunflower. I say that because I don't know if you'll be able to tell what it is. You probably could. That's my progress on it. Next we have a piece that I literally don't know the designer of because it's not printed on the chart. I got it off of Etsy. I might be able to track down the seller. I'm doing this on 32 count Belfast in Seashell from Color and Cotton. And this is so freaking close to being done. I need to do French knots in all of the yellow flowers, and then there's some back stitching in the flowers as well, and then I'm done. I don't know why I have not finished this yet. This is ridiculous. I need to finish this. Woo. Okay. Next in Whip Go starts, we have Savor Every Stitch. This is by Luminous Fiber Arts. This was a market release this year. And I'm doing this on, I don't know, some white 32 count Lugana, I think. And last but not least, for Mania, we have A Raven's Reply. This is also Luminous Fiber Arts. And I'm doing this on a 40 count don't know what it's called. Did I write it down? I did not write it down. I'm sure I have it in the drawer somewhere, but... And this was my first time doing 40 count. Oh, wait. I have the tag here. It's weathered shingle, but the maker is not listed. Okay, so that was Mania, and real quick before we move on from Mania, I want to show you something else interesting. So here you hopefully are seeing on the screen a graph of the number of stitches per Mania start. And so you can see that my Mill Hill kit got the least love. But everything else was pretty much similar. But you can see that my time spent in this graph is wildly different. I spent way more time on Buffy. I think that's because it's got some like fiddly confetti in the flowers, and so it took me much longer to stitch the same number of stitches. I actually stitched over the cutoff time that I set for myself for that. And you can see the Mill Hill got a ridiculously small amount of time compared to the rest of them. I think that's just because there was a day that I just like wasn't feeling it, and so I only stitched on this for 2 days instead of 3. Okay, let's move back to start categories. So the next big category of starts was Be Well and Stitch, and that is all of the pandemic stuff. So let me pull those out. Okay. So these are in no particular order. I stitched this Be Well by the Drawn Thread. I stitched this on the called for, I think it's like 30 count. Let me see. I didn't write it down. I think it's a 30 count lamb's wool, maybe? Not sure. Then we have by Erica Michaels. I stitched this 1/1 in my own colors. This is Stay Home and Stitch. I did this on 28 count Mushroom Lugana, 1/1. I don't think I'm going to make this into a berry. I think I'm just going to make it into a little cushion. Then from So Much to Love, I stitched this one. And this is on a Color and Cotton Mystery Even Weave. And then this one was not a freebie for Be Well and Stitch, but it was topical, and so I decided to pull it out of my stash and start it during my Be Well and Stitch campaign, so to speak. And this is from Circus Stitches, and I stitched this on a 32 count Lugana in Deep Plum from Color and Cotton. And this is a quote from Hamilton, I believe sung by Aaron Burr in Wait For It. I think that's right. And finally in Be Well and Stitch, we have my one and only remaining whip from that. Woo, this is folded up super weird. Here we go. We have Stay Safe at Home and Stitch. And this one is really close to done. I ran out of this color, but I was able to get some more of it, so I should be able to finish that. And I'm looking for the designer for this. Of course I didn't write it down. Hold, please. Oh gosh, this is from Atelier Soed ID. Oh gosh. I don't know how to say that at all. That looks like it's probably French. Atelier Soed ID? I have no idea. I'm so sorry for butchering that. That's this one. And that is on a piece of 32 count linen by Nikki's Creations in Antique Rose. And I stitched that all in Cherry Bark by Gentle Art. Okay, so that was all Be Well and Stitch. Next, let's look at gifts. So, I showed you, there was another Be Well and Stitch, but I already showed it to you. That was the heartstring samplery one, that got more than 10 hours. So gifts. I already showed you Tin Man. I already showed you Poppy and Lily. What else? I already showed you Blockwork Chessboard. I'll put in here, I stitched for Michelle Bendy Stitchy's Patreon swap. I stitched this ATC for another Patreon subscriber of hers. And then I already showed you the flamingo piece. That one I started as a gift or swap. Okay, so the only two I haven't showed you yet from gifts is this one. This I stitched for my mom for Mother's Day. And I adapted this from a pattern by Christabel Sinique. And I put in this quote by Faulkner here. And this is just on some probably 16 count Ada. Okay. Last but not least, this is a gift that I haven't showed on my channel because I was waiting until I sent it to the recipient, but I'm taking forever to FFO it. So I'm just going to show it because I don't think Michelle watches my videos. But I stitched this for Michelle Bendy Stitchy because she says this all the time and I think it's hilarious. This is a quote from Harry Potter when Harry is trying to explain that he needs to find the diadem, but he doesn't know where it is. He doesn't know what it looks like. And he says, I realize it's not much to go on. And I think it's Seamus that goes, that's nothing to go on. And Michelle quotes this all the time, every time I laugh. So I stitched this for her. And that'll probably get like a pillow finish, and then I'll send that to her. Okay, so the last start category is just like other events and happenings. So we have my birthday. I stitched this little cutie from Lindy Stitches. This was like a gift chart from Stephanie. And I stitched this on the same fabric as Hildy's Brew, which is, I think, Picture This Plus Echo. It's an Ada. Then for the fires in Australia, I stitched this cutie by Fiddlesticks AU, I believe. Let me confirm. Yes, Fiddlesticks AU. And I stitched this on 18 count Ada in Whimsy by Picture This Plus. Then the piece I mentioned that I stitched for my grandma this is just an inside joke for my family. You wouldn't want to make Grammy cross now, would you? So that made me smile while she was sick, and now that'll get finished up into a little pillow or something and sent to her. Okay, next, this is another shameful whip. So this is the Cardinal Needleworks freebie to celebrate their opening. And this is completely shameful that I have not finished this. Because it's basically done. The only thing that's undone is that in the chart, this cardinal is like holding some orts in its beak, and I have to stitch those in. It's just like a little bit of backstitch or something. How is it that I still have this in my whip pile? So irritating. This was designed by Lainey B for Cardinal Needleworks, and I'm stitching this on a scrap of Color and Cotton Even Weave that I think is probably 28 count. Okay, and then we have some Black Lives Matter starts. These are pretty recent, so you probably remember these. I Can't Breathe. This was designed by the Debaucherous Needle. And I did this on 16 count navy Aida in the called for threads. Then I did this piece that I just showed in my video a couple of days ago. This was designed by me using alphabets by Happy Sloth. And this is a Martin Luther King quote that he adapted from a much older quote. And then finally, the only whip from that group of starts that I have is this one, and this is the like Black Power fist icon with Black Lives Matter stitched into it. And it just occurred to me that that looks a little bit phallic. Whoops. I should fill that in so it doesn't look like that anymore. Whoops. Okay. So, those are all of my starts from this year so far. Now let's get into stale projects. So these are projects that I have not touched this year at all. It's a long video, you guys. Okay. And the graph that you hopefully see on your screen at the moment, you can see how many days of progress it has on it so far, and how long it's been since I worked on it. So the red is a little bit of progress, and the blue is lots of staleness. Yeah, most of these projects don't have a lot of love on them yet. So we have Autumn Quakers. This is by Rosewood Manor, and I'm stitching this on 28 count linen in doubloon from Picture This Plus. Ooh, has all these fuzzies on it. Where did these come from? I think the inside of the bag, maybe. That's what that looks like. I think that's oriented the right way. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Tiny little start. This project is huge. But it did get called for in WIPGO for July. So this will definitely come out really, really soon. What is my goal for that? Let's see. I didn't write it down. Why not? Let's see. A page finish. Ooh, that's going to be a lot of stitching. Page finish on this. Oh, goodness. I better buckle in. Okay. And I'm stitching that with the called for Valdani threads. Next, we have this is Hogwarts Express. This is probably the furthest along of my still projects. This is also on my WipGo board, and it just hasn't come up yet. I'm stitching this on 18 count Ada. This is designed by, I can't even read my own writing, Smet, S-M-E-T, on Etsy. That's upside down. This is Hogwarts Express. So there's not too much left on this. I have to finish the train and then put in, there's like a 9 3/4 in this corner. So not too bad. So that'll be a finish this year at some point. Okay, next, this is sort of a UFO project for just this year because I was focusing on 2 other blackwork pieces, the chessboard and the Sal, both of which are now languishing, but so this is, what is this called? This is called Rainbow Blackwork by Peppermint Purple, and I'm doing this on 18 count white Ada with the called for colors, so I have the first row finished, and I look forward to getting back to this. This is the only stale project that is not on my WebGo board, and that's because it's temporarily UFO. Last but not least, in the stale projects category, we have my barn owl, and this is designed by Dance Needle on Etsy, an 18 count white Ada. And that's what it looks like. I believe my WipGo goal for this is finishing the page. So this is not as much stitching. I believe the page is down to here and up to here. Whoops. I think it's like a quarter. Oh my gosh, I can't do this. Looking at the camera, it's like that. This is probably my least favorite whip. I have considered permanently UFOing this before, but I haven't stitched on this in a while, and so I need to bring it back out again to see if I still don't like it and see if I'm willing to push through it or if it's really bugging me. This is my only full coverage piece that I don't have on Pattern Keeper, and I mean, this pattern is terrible. No offense to the designer. I know formatting the charts is really hard, but I do not like the format of this chart, and it makes stitching on it not fun. So at this point, you have now seen every single project that I stitched on in 2020, except for one. And with that, we're going to move into talking about Stitch from Stash. So I sort of on the sidelines participate in Stitch from Stash because I'm still kind of a baby stitcher, and so I don't have a big stash of fabric and floss. I am now acquiring quite the significant stash of charts, but every time I start something, I need to kit it up, and usually I need to buy at least something in order to complete the kit. But I do still like keeping track of what I'm spending and, giving myself credit for finishes that I'm doing. So, here is a representation of my Stitch from Stash first part of 2020. And I think I definitely lost. I definitely lost Stitch from Stash. I wasn't trying to win, but I really fell off the wagon. So you can see the yellow slice at the top is credit, then the red is budget, and the blue is spend. Woof. So now I'll show you this graph, which shows month by month what my credits and spending look like. And June, I mean, if you watch my last video, it should not be a surprise to you why June looks the way that it does, but I am just still completely shocked by what that looks like. This is exactly why I track data, because seeing visuals like this is really helpful for me to be like, okay, we're gonna do a couple of like belt tightening months before we do any more crazy buying. But as we know, Stitch from Stash, if anybody's not familiar with Stitch from Stash, it's a Facebook group where there's like a grid for, depending on the size of a finish that you do, you get a amount of fake money in credit. And so the goal is to spend less money than your budget and the fake money credits that you get back for finishing things. So it's just an encouragement to finish things instead of starting new things, or spending money to start new things, basically. But so the finish grid is based on like stitch size. So if you've got something that's 70 by 70, or like 105 stitches by 30 stitches, or whatever it is, you find where that puts you on the chart that they have made, and then you say, okay, that finish is worth $8, or that finish is worth $2, or $10, or $15. So I've quickly realized that method really incentivizes full coverage finishes, because the amount of stitching that you do for full coverage is so dense that it really doesn't capture the amount of work that you put into it. So here I've got some side-by-side graphs of what my finishes look like in terms of the credit that I got for them from Stitch from Stash versus the number of stitches it took to complete that finish. And full coverage things, like you can count a page finish. So you can see that like June and January are pretty representative, that the credit that I got pretty much represents the stitches that I did. February and March is pretty close. But then you look at May and April, and they're no longer close. So you can see that in May, I didn't get nearly enough credit for the work that I put in, and in April, I got more credit than what I put in. And you'd think that it would even out, but it doesn't. I don't think it does. So let me pull that up for myself to look at here. Where did it go? Here we go. So in January, I got $27.50 in credit, and I finished a little over 38,000 stitches. Sorry, 3,800 stitches. February, I got $8 of credit, and that was 417 stitches of finishes. So that seems pretty tiny for $8 of credit. Then March was also an $8 finish. That was 786 stitches in that finish. Then April, I got $52.50 of credit, and I stitched 5,200 stitches to get that. Then in May, I got $11.14 of credit, and I stitched almost 5,400 stitches. So approximately the same number of stitches in May and April, and I got $11 of credit in May, and I got $52 of credit in April. That May finish was my Harry Potter covers page finish. And like that was such a big accomplishment, and I only got $11 for it. So I think because I am not really participating actively in Stitch from Stash, because I'm not like actually trying to win anything, I think I'm gonna be modifying it a little bit moving forward so that I actually give myself proper credit for full coverage. I think that's really the problem, is just full coverage. And so I don't know if I'll be like doubling it or tripling it or something, but I'm going to give myself more credit for a full coverage page finish, or a full coverage finish of any kind, because it's just so much more dense. And then the only one I didn't mention, I got $21 of credit in June for almost 3,500 stitches. So definitely May and April were my big finish months. But April was quite a massive credit month. And then we have June and January with some pretty significant finishes as well. And I just want to clarify that by saying I finished 5,400 stitches in May, I didn't actually stitch all of those 5,400 stitches in the month of May, but I finished a chunk of something that had 5,400 stitches in it. So like January, what did I finish in January? I finished But First Tea in January. So I got credit for that whole finish, but really it was a small number of stitches that I actually completed in January. But I didn't get credit for those stitches any other time. So like they all get credit for January, if that makes sense. So while we're here with Stitch from Stash, getting credit for finishes, I will show you the only finish that I have that didn't fall into any of the other categories that I've had so far in this video. And that's my menorah by Works by ABC, stitched on 32 count antique white Lugana. And I stitched this mostly last year, but I did the beading this year, so I count that as a 2020 finish. Okay, that's it. You have officially seen every single project I stitched on in 2020, and that was really fun for me to go through and see how much progress I've made. I also pulled out my stale projects, which for me is really helpful to see them again and go, oh yeah, I really want to work on that. I'm really excited to get Autumn Quakers back out. Really excited to finish up Hogwarts Express. Wait, there's one I missed. Sorry, you guys, it fell on the floor. This is also a stale project. This is also a WIPGO project. So this will come out and be finished this year. I'm stitching this on 32 count beautiful beige linen. And this is my Galleria 2019 freebie from So Much to Love. And doesn't have very much stitching left in it. So that'll get finished this year. Sorry guys, that was an out of order one. Okay, now you've seen every project that I worked on in 2020, and also my stale ones, and yeah, there are some that are like really close to a finish that's just like, just do it, just finish it. And some that really are craving having some love put into them, and so I'm looking forward to doing that. So thank you for hanging out with me during this fun little review of 2020, or at least, the first 6 months of 2020. And looking at some nerdy data with me. If you have any questions about how I collected this data, or if you have more questions about digging into my data, if you want to know more about my stitching, happy to answer those in the comments below, or you're always welcome to DM me on Instagram as well. And if there are any projects that you are desperate for me to pull back out and work on some more, definitely let me know. Because I need some encouragement sometimes on deciding which project to pull out. So, all right, well, thank you guys, and I will see you probably in my next regular Flosstube. Bye!